Both John and Sandra are off today. This is America Reports. So the former president will make those comments soon from Trump Tower on Wall Street. He spent most of his morning in a New York City courtroom today as his legal team pushed to delay District Attorney Alvin Bragg's hush money case against him. The judge, however, Bill, denied that request and ruled that the case will start on April 15th. So let's go straight to Eric Shawn. He's live outside the New York Supreme Court. So, Eric, what are we expecting to hear from the former president in just a few moments?
Well, we expect a victory lap from the former president because the New York State Appellate Court handed him a big victory, a win in his case here in New York City dealing with his real estate fraud bond. The Appellate Court basically stopped New York State Attorney General Letitia James cold in her attempts to potentially try and seize any of Trump's assets. The Attorney General has no need now, or at least in the next week or so, to do that after the Appellate Court cut that huge bond by more than 68%. That means James will not be necessary for her to try and seize any of Mr. Trump's assets or any of his real estate holdings. This is what the Appellate Court did. As you know, there was that appellate bond of $454 million that Mr. Trump was
most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
But the appellate court this morning said that if he pays $175 million over the next 10 days,
all
that
political.
will satisfy that for now. So we're
dirty political.
Complete brakes on James's attempts to try and seize anything. The president, during a court hearing here and the break in that, said that he is honored that the
bond should have been stopped completely,
and that he is going to put up the cash.
It will be my honor to post, and we'll post whatever is necessary, whether it's cash or security or bonds. It's a decision we appreciate and respect the appellate division very much. Cash.
You heard it when he turned around and said cash. He was not as successful, though, in this hearing. This hearing today had to deal with the Stormy Daniels hush money trial. Judge Juan Merchan decided to actually set the date for this trial for April 15th. Trump's attorneys are trying to delay that yet again. Mr. Trump faces 34 counts of business fraud dealing with the Stormy Daniels case. That's where he is alleged to have paid the porn star money through his former fixer, Michael Cohen, in order to hide that from the voters during the 2016 presidential election. But the former president said he intends to appeal this ruling too.
This was a case that had been brought 3.5 years ago, and they decided to wait now, just during the election, so that I won't be able to campaign. We'll be appealing this.
Well, as it stands now, the very first trial in American history, criminal trial of a former president, is set to kick off in the building behind me in 21 days. Aisha, back to you.
Eric Shawn live for us. Let's get right to the former president who's making remarks right now. Let's listen in.
Start before a lot of them come in, which frankly always makes me happy. So, a lot of things happened today. This is all about election interference. This is all Biden-run things, meaning Biden and his thugs, because I don't know if he knows he's alive. And it's a shame. It's a shame what's happening to our country. This is election interference. They are doing things that have never been done in this country before. We've never had anything like it, certainly not at this level, but we've really had nothing like it that I've been able to find. It does happen a lot in third world countries, banana republics. If you look at what we just left, you have a case which they're dying to get this thing started. The judge cannot go faster. He wants to get it started so badly. And there's tremendous corruption. You have Pomerantz, Mark Pomerantz. He was Hillary Clinton's lawyer, or Democrat National Committee's lawyer. He worked in Paul Weiss. He walked in and he took over the district attorney's office. Nobody's ever seen anything like that, to prosecute Trump. And then they wouldn't do what he wanted to do, and he goes out and he writes a book. Long before any decisions were made, he writes a book about it. And the book gets published, and everybody's reading his book. And the judge said there's nothing wrong with that. And if you look at Bragg had a fit over that. Bragg said this trial is now dead. We can't do the trial. Well, that was one of the problems, and the judge should have allowed that to happen. And you had other instances like Colangelo. Colangelo is a radical left from the DOJ who was put into the state working with Letitia James, and then was put into the district attorney's office to run the trial against Trump. And that was done by Biden and his thugs also, because they can't win an election because of the borders, because of energy prices, because of inflation, because of Afghanistan, the worst and most embarrassing day in the history of our country. He can't win because of Russia, because of all the problems, because of Ukraine being attacked by Russia. And he can't win because of the October 7th attack of Israel, which he should have never allowed to happen. Would have never happened if I were president. Ukraine would have never been attacked if I was president. And you wouldn't have inflation if I was president. We didn't have inflation. So all of these things, so what they do is they do election interference, which is court cases, and let's try and tie him up, and let's take as much of his money as possible. I respect the appellate division for substantially reducing that ridiculous amount of money that was put on by a corrupt judge named Engoron. You ought to be looked at, seriously looked at, especially what he did with valuations. He's the one, he's a fraudulent valuator, where he values Mar-a-Lago at $18 million, and people say it's worth 50 to 100 times that much, the biggest experts in the business. So he ought to be looked at, and James ought to be looked at, because she tried to get him. She's like the puppet master of the judge. And, you know, our state, this state, is losing tremendous prestige. It's losing its companies. It's losing its people. They're fleeing, and violent crime is flourishing. And we can't have that. You can't have that. No city should have that. And it's happening in other cities, but not with the lawfare. The lawfare that they're doing is incredible. So they could have done this in the case of the trial that we just left, one of the many that are going. Every single one of them is run by Biden and his thugs. It's the only way they think they can get elected, and I think so far it's backfiring, because the people of this country understand it. It's backfiring. But they're being run, and they're running all of these different cases, so ridiculous, the cases, every one of them is ridiculous. You take a look at any one of them, and you say any one of them, it wouldn't make any difference. This is all weaponization of DOJ and FBI. They raided my house in violation of a thing called the Fourth Amendment. Not allowed to do that. They raided my house in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. No notice, no nothing. They raided it. I can't believe it. Nobody can believe it. And we'll see how that all works out in the end. But it's illegal what they're doing, it's criminal what they're doing, and it's never been done before in this country.
Certainly.
You can't have
Is illegal.
an election
Shameful.
in the middle of a political season. We just had Super Tuesday, and we had a Tuesday after a Tuesday already, and we had Louisiana the other day, a couple of days ago, and we won in a record number, the highest number ever recorded. But we're in the middle of an election right now, and we're fighting crooked Joe Biden, who's the worst president in the history of our country, by far, who's let this country go to hell. The borders, millions and millions of people coming in from prisons, from mental institutions. They're terrorists. Many people coming in from prisons and mental institutions. Think of it. And terrorists are coming into our country, and this guy's just letting them come in by the millions. I think we have 15 million people already. People don't say that. I say it. And I'll bet I'm right, too. So
That's right.
we're going through this weaponization of our government to try and knock out somebody's political opponent. And so far, based on the polls, it's not working at all. The people understand it. We have a man who just ruled they'd like the trial to start in 21 days or something. And I don't know how you can have a trial that's going on right in the middle of an election. Not fair. Not fair. It's not fair at all. He knows that, too. He's a Democrat judge. He wants to do that because they're all trying to damage Trump as much as possible. It's having the reverse effect, but maybe someday it won't. I don't know. But it's having the reverse effect. It's a terrible, terrible precedent, a terrible thing to do. They could have started this when I left office. You could have gone back 3 years, more than that. When I left office, all of these things could have been started so we wouldn't be quibbling over starting this week or that week or 2 days or 3 days. It wouldn't have mattered. This thing would have been over 2 years ago. They could have started.
Shameful the way they handled it.
There's no case. If you read
All
Andy
evil
McCarthy's
politics.
piece, if you read Jonathan
Thankful.
Turley's piece, if you read legal
Donald
scholars
Trump
all
standing
over
up to
the
them.
world, they say this DA case is a hoax and it's something that shouldn't have. It's not even a crime. They say there's no crime, and there is no crime. So I just say it's a sad day for this country when you have something like this.
Absolutely.
And remember the words.
I know the
should have
feeling.
started 3 years ago if they were going to start it at all. And then you wouldn't be quibbling over what week it's going to end, days. They're quibbling over days and hours. They wouldn't be quibbling at all. They never started it. And you know why they didn't start it? Because they didn't know I'd be running. And they didn't know how well I'd do. And if I were not running, or if I were doing poorly like everyone else has done, because they're all done, they're all knocked out except for crooked Joe Biden. If I were doing poorly, this wouldn't be happening. None of these trials would have been happening. If I wasn't running, they wouldn't be happening.
That's right.
So it's a sad day in our country in many respects. But the good day is that the appellate division was fair. It's a lot of money still, but the judge is corrupt, in my opinion. He's the most overturned judge. He's been overturned 5 times in this case alone. He ruled against me before he even knew anything about the case. He ruled against me. The whole case was all about damages, and there were no damages. And perhaps you'll get him to tell you about what took place in terms of a settlement negotiation, because those weren't the numbers he was discussing. Those weren't the numbers. It's a disgrace what's happening in our country. And we have to get our country back, and we're going to get our country back. That's what's going to happen. November 5th, I believe, will be the most important day in the history of our country.
Absolutely.
We'll get these people
Vote
out of there,
Republican.
and we'll seal up the borders, and we'll, as I say, drill, baby, drill. We'll be drilling. We'll get energy costs down. We'll get rid of the ridiculous electric car mandate, so nobody's ever heard of anything so foolish and so stupid. And we'll bring crime back to law and order. We're going to get those words law and order back, because our cities are a disaster. Greatly respect the decision of the appellate division, and we will abide by that. We'll put up cash or bond very quickly, securities, cash or bond, whatever it is. We'll put it up very quickly, and we'll win the case. Todd, maybe I'll have Todd say a couple of words, and then I'll have any questions or anything you want to ask. Okay, Todd, wherever you may be, please.
Thank you, President Trump. So, as we said in court today, we very much believe that starting this trial in April, or even starting this trial at any point before the election, is completely unfair to President Trump. It's completely unfair to the American people who are evaluating who they want to be the next president. And we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to do everything that we can to defend President Trump in that courtroom. And like we said today, we believe that we have a tremendous amount of information now in our hands to help us do that. And in any event, we certainly feel as if the date that Judge Merchan held today, April 15th, is not a date we should go to trial, and we're going to continue to fight.
And if you read the Andy McCarthy article, or Jonathan Turley, or many of the legals, I think almost every single one of them, that's not even a crime. We're being tried for something that's not even a crime. They say at most it's a misdemeanor, but there's no misdemeanor either. So we have violent criminals that are murdering people, killing people. We have drug dealers all over the place, and they go free and they can do whatever they want. But they go after Trump when there's not even a crime. And did you see the number of people were there? You had Colangelo, and behind him, and remember this, Colangelo was a DOJ guy. He's a Biden DOJ guy. Why is he in the Manhattan DA's office trying the case? That in itself is a conflict. He's in the Manhattan DA's office trying the case. I mean, that's called a conflict. And then, remember what I told you also, Mark Pomerantz, when Bragg heard about it, he went openly hostile. He said, that's one of the worst things I've heard, and you all covered that. Then all of a sudden, time goes by, you know, the great healer is time. Time goes by, and all of a sudden they forget that. But that's a terrible thing. Colangelo and Pomerantz, terrible thing. And the judge didn't want to rule on that. He said everything was fine, that what they did was fine. I don't think it's fine when they take a Hillary Clinton lawyer and put him in to prosecute me. I don't think that's fine. I think it's very bad. And he does it on the House. He does it without fee. I don't want any fee. I don't want any fee. Our country has gone down a long way. Cliff, would you like to say something?
Just simply, we're gratified by the appellate division's decision today, which shows that there still is a rule of law in New York and that the appellate division is following it. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Acquittal in this trial?
Oh, we shouldn't have a trial. This is not a trial. This is not an act of criminality.
But you are having one.
I don't know if we're having one. We're going to be appealing right now, I can tell you that. We did nothing wrong, just like I did nothing wrong in the other case. My statements, my financial statements were conservative. They were low, not high. I mean, he valued Mar-a-Lago at a tiny fraction of what it is. He's the fraud. He created a fraud in order to help his narrative and her narrative, because he does whatever she wants. And the judge is really, what he's done is fraudulent. He made Mar-a-Lago, you know it very well, Maggie. He made Mar-a-Lago into $18 million. I had many offers. They said, I'll give you 19. Okay? You could take half of the living room is worth more than that. So it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. And he stays with it. So he's either whacked out or dishonest, one or the other, or both, probably both. But he's a disgrace to the system. And I think that New York State was helped a lot today by the decision. I'll give you an example. Truth Social is doing very well. It's hot as a pistol and doing great. And it's going public. And the New York Stock Exchange wants to have us badly. And I told them, we can't do the New York Stock Exchange. You treat it too badly in New York. We don't want to do the New York Stock Exchange. And the people at the Stock Exchange are very, very upset about it. The top person is mortified, can't believe it. He said, I'm losing business because of New York, because people don't want to be in New York and they don't want to go on the New York Stock Exchange. So you can ask them about it. But, you know, how can you do that? I'd love to go on the New York Stock Exchange. It was always, you know, it would be a big thing to go on the New York Stock Exchange. That'd be nice. But people aren't going on the New York Stock Exchange now because of what's happening in New York. Because they don't want to be attacked by a thug like this horrible Attorney General that we have in New York, the worst in the whole country. So we'll decide about Truth Social and what we do with it. But there's just an example of how this is hurting New York and New York State. Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit more detail about the timing of when you plan to secure the bond and how exactly you're planning to pay the bond?
Well, as they say, I have a lot of cash. You know I do because you looked at my statements. I mean, you've been examining my statements for a long time, and I have much more than that in cash. But I would also like to be able to use some of my cash to get elected. They don't want me to use my cash to get elected. They don't want that. They don't want me taking cash out to use it for the campaign. And they looked at it, and this judge looked at it, and he's part of the whole deal. And well, he's such a disgrace for this city. Again, the most overturned judge. There's never been that we can find a case where a judge has been overturned now 5 times. It was 4 times, now it's 5 times. Been overturned. But I have a lot of cash and a great company. I mean, to think they want to go after a company, this is a great company, a company that's doing very well. I've got very low debt on buildings, like this building. I have very low debt on this building. Most buildings I have no debt. Most clubs I have no debt. Look at my greatest assets, I have no debt. I didn't even include like brand value. And the brand value, I became president because of the brand, let's say. But the brand value it's one of the most valuable brand values. So I think I wouldn't swap it for any other brand in the world, Trump. I don't even put anything down for it. I had very conservative statements. And the way they made them look bad is by valuing Mar-a-Lago at $18 million instead of what the real value is, which was at least 50 to maybe 100 times more. Think of that. This is the fraud. They're creating a fraud, and they're hurting the state so badly. And then I can't go into the New York Stock Exchange because I can't do business, because I don't want to do, not because I can't, because I don't want to do business in New York. And the people at the New York Stock Exchange, I can tell you right now, and they're very fine people, they're not happy. Yeah, you were just saying.
Mr. President, you mentioned the cash you have, you said on Friday, it's in like $500 million. You intended to put some of that into the campaign. Now that the bond's been reduced, are you going to start putting money into your campaign? You haven't done that since 2016.
Well, first of all, it's none of your business, I mean, frankly. But I might do that. I have the option. But if I have to spend $500 million on a bond, I wouldn't have that option. I'd have to start selling things. I don't have to sell anything because it's a phenomenal company. Look, I built a phenomenal company. Someday they'll actually report that. I built a phenomenal company that's very low leverage, unbelievably low leverage, with a lot of cash, a lot of everything else. Why should I let a crooked judge make a decision to give $450 million that allows me to spend very little money on my campaign if I so choose? I'll be spending money on my campaign. I might spend a lot of money on my campaign. but I should have that option. A crooked judge shouldn't say, we're going to have you post a bond and take all of that money that I could be spending on a campaign or other things if I want to do other things. So we were gratified by the professionalism of the opinion today. I thought it was I think it's a very important opinion for New York, but the only thing that's going to really solve that problem is when I win, because you're going to have to win. Because no company is going to be coming to New York if I don't win that case. That case is a scam, it's a sham, and it's a hoax.
And he's right.
No,
I totally agree with him.
I think you'd be allowed to, possibly. I don't know. I mean, if you go borrow from a big bank, many of the banks are outside of this. As you know, the biggest banks, frankly, are outside of our country. So you could do that, but I don't need to borrow money. I have a lot of money. I built a great company, but I don't want to have a crooked judge named Unborn and a crooked, horrible, the worst, I would say without question, Attorney General in the country, the most obnoxious and the worst Attorney General in the whole country. And she did it for political reasons. Go back and take a look at her ads. We will stop Trump. Well, she knows nothing about me. I'd never heard of her. She was advertising and she took ads in saying, we will stop Trump. We will stop him, stop him. Vicious. I said, boy, that's a bad one. Then I looked, she got elected. But then she tried to do it with the governor. And it didn't work. She went after the current governor, who's much more talented than she is. She went after the current governor. She was very nasty. And she polled at about 3%. She polled at nothing, and after 6 weeks or 7 weeks, she pulled out of the race. She ran for governor, you know, on what she was doing to me. She thought that would work. It didn't work. I just think that it's very important that, you know, this is a time when businesses have a choice to go to a lot of places, including other countries. They don't have to stay in our country, but they can certainly go also to a lot of other states. A lot of people going to Texas, Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina, a lot of South Carolina, and you have a lot of competition. You shouldn't be persecuting people that have done a great job. I paid $300 million approximately over the years in taxes here. $300 million. That's a lot of money. And you're going to lose those people that pay all that money, and you're not even going to have a state anymore. They just won't be able to do it. Yes.
Back to the trial here in 3 weeks. Do you plan to testify? And are you...
Which hearing?
The trial hearing.
I don't know that you're going to have the trial. I don't know how you can have a trial like this in the middle of an election, a presidential election. And this is, again, this is a Biden trial. These are all Biden trials because Colangelo works for Biden. Can you imagine they take a guy out of DOJ and they put him into the Attorney General's office and then into the Manhattan DA's office to go after Trump? These are all Biden trials, so I don't know that you're going to have it. I think we're going to get some court rulings. Yeah, please.
But will you testify if that trial goes forward in 3 weeks?
I would have no problem testifying. I didn't do anything wrong.
And would you be concerned that a conviction, if you are convicted in that trial, could cost you the election, given what Todd said voters?
Well, it could also make me more popular because the people know it's a scam. It's a Biden trial. This is a Biden. There is no trial. There's a Biden trial. Colangelo, the man who stood up, had the nerve to actually stand up and take over. You know, he's been sitting in the background for the last year. Today he went right up front because they figure he buffaloed the whole public and the writers, including you people. He got a buffalo. They forgot. They didn't, you know, a little while ago. Time sort of people forget with time. They don't have good memories. I do. They don't have good memories. But Colangelo from the DOJ was put there to go after Trump. And today he stood up and he took over the whole office. He's been running the whole thing. He's been signing the letters. He's been doing things for a long time. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. This is all done by the Democrat Party, and it's all done by Biden and his group. I don't know if it's Biden because I don't know if Biden is even sharp enough. I don't know if Biden knows what's happening. You want to know the truth? Maybe he does. He probably does. But this is all done by Biden and the thugs that work for Biden. And it's a very bad thing. It's a very dangerous thing for our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I admire him completely
Okay, so former
for
President
hanging
Trump
in
there
there.
at 4 640 Wall Street, Trump Tower, one of those buildings, properties that could have been seized as early as today by AG Letitia James, just making remarks there, lengthy remarks, taking questions after finding out a stunning decision by the appeals court in New York to reduce his bond by a whopping 60%. He said he was grateful for the appeals court decision. The appellate division was fair, he said. And he said, Bill, this kind of stuff happens in third world countries.
Yes, yes, indeed. I picked up on the respect that he suggested for the appellate division. Let's see if he's got anything more to say here. We'll hang on the shot for a moment. For what is considered a significant reduction in the bond, they dropped it by about 2/3, actually. With regard to the other trial with Alvin Bragg, he said 3 weeks to a trial, suggesting it's a rush job. Now, there's a lot to get to, and we've got our A-team here to do exactly that. Jonathan Turley and Gary Kubacker-Bond and Andy McCarthy are with us now. And, well, Turley and McCarthy, your names were invoked several times. And Andy, I want to start with you because I think we found the article to which he was referring. If it's the wrong one, tell us. But this was dated March 23rd, so about, what is that, a week ago?
It's over the weekend, right?
Yeah. Bragg falsifies business record charges against Trump. That's the title of your piece. Explain it, Andy.
Well, there's a lot of problems with this. It would take us an hour just to flush out all the problems with this case. But I think at bottom it's ironic that Trump is being charged by Bragg with falsifying his business records when I think the premise of this prosecution is a falsification. That is, Bragg is saying he's bringing a falsified business records prosecution. What he's actually trying to do is enforce federal campaign finance law, which he doesn't have any authority to do. And I think if he were being transparent about that, there would have been great outcry about it when the indictment came out. He's played his cards close to the vest from the beginning because he doesn't want to come out and say that what he's trying to do is something that the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission, which are the two federal bureaucracies that are authorized to enforce the campaign finance laws, they looked at this case with respect to Trump and elected not to bring enforcement action because I don't think this is a campaign finance matter. Bragg is going on the premise that it is, and that somehow Trump won the 2016 election on account of it. He doesn't really have a statute to hang his hat on in New York for that, and he's trying to enforce federal law.
Jonathan Turley, I want to bring you in here because here's the thing. I mean, he certainly has gotten a lifeline now, and you can hear the relief in his voice. He's got 10 days now to pay $175 million, which he can absolutely come up with. Letitia James put out a statement here where she wanted to remind the former president that, look, the court has already found, she says, that he engaged in years of fraud, and that the judgment, the $464 million judgment plus interest against Trump still stands here. So what's next here after he pays the $175? Because this appeals court could come back and decide to reject his appeal.
Well, that's right. You know, the problem with the original trial decision is really twofold. One is, did he engage in fraud? You know, the real estate market is rather infamous for undervaluing and overvaluing assets when it comes to loans and taxes. This is a ubiquitous problem in the area. But let's assume that there was over or undervaluation that occurred here. The question then becomes the penalty, which adds a new problem because the judge showed no restraint at all and just imposed a figure that most of us believe is absurd. I mean, when you drill down on that figure, there's nothing there. There is a lot of speculation. But since you didn't have anyone that lost a dime, since the so-called victims wanted to get new loans from the Trump Corporation, this figure really is quite grotesque in its size, and it does raise constitutional issues. So the Court of Appeals has to look not just at ultimately, and there's been a couple of appeals, so these have been divided up, but you have the merits issues that have gone before the Court of Appeals. You're now going to have those questions about the size of this penalty. I can't imagine this penalty being sustained by the appellate court. It was incredibly excessive, and I do believe that Enron had to know that by adopting such a huge figure, it would have been difficult for Trump to appeal his decision without selling property.
So
Terrible, terrible.
From 460
Such a tragedy in our nation.
175
Everybody,
million.
please go out and vote for
You were on
Donald
the air
Trump
earlier today,
for president.
Jonathan and